Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to Raya and Mordechai. Shavua Tov. And we're coming closer and closer to Chodesh Elul, next Shabbos. This coming up Shabbos is Shabbos Mevorchim, when we bless the month of Elul. And we've got a very interesting parsha. Our parsha talks about Dinei Kashrut, the laws of keeping kosher. And these are specifically connected to a general concept in the whole way that we look at our mission in the world, in Olam Hazeh. And the reason is that there are two signs when we are talking about when we're talking about a kosher animal that we are allowed to eat. It's got to have two signs that make it kosher. The first sign is that at the end of the leg, at the end of the foot, if I'm not mistaken, it's got to be split into two. The way the Torah calls it is mafreset parsan. Some animals, their foot is just one piece, but with these kosher animals, it's mafris parsa, which means it has two edges, or it splits into two. That's one sign. There's a second sign that it's got to be ma'alat gera. Ma'alat gera means that it re-chews its food. It doesn't just chew it once and then swallow it, but after it swallows it, the animal chews it again. Those are two signs. Now, when we know a sign could be just like a signal, such as the robots, the traffic lights that we have on the street, they don't have a real meaning. Green isn't really a permission to go. There's no meaning behind it. It's just something technical that in order for us to know who should go first and when we should stop, so they came up with these signs. The signs that the Torah brings to define a kosher animal, those signs have a deep connection to the whole lesson of kashrut. They aren't only just signals that we as human beings agreed on. It's not signals that Hashem told us, you know what, this is a sign that you should know that it's kosher. There's a meaning behind these signs. So we're going to try and understand the meaning and mostly how that meaning applies to us. Regarding the whole idea of eating meat, this is something that we'll learn a bit more in our parsha. How, in fact, at what time we actually started eating meat. Until the times of Noach, people weren't allowed to eat at all. And in the times of Am Yisrael entering Eretz Yisrael, right before that, Hashem tells us, the Im Yarchiv, the pasuk is, the Im Yarchiv Hashem Elokecha es gevurcha, when Hashem will extend your borders, then you will want to eat meat. There's a special way eating it. You've got to shecht the animal, which means you've got to do a proper shchita, not just in a cruel way, killing the animal, but you've got to make sure that when you kill it, it's done in the most humane way possible that causes the least pain to the animal. And that's why it's done in such a way that where the death is on the spot and it doesn't need to feel any kind of pain. So we'll also be discussing this whole idea of Dinei Kashrut regarding the Shchita. But again, before that, we spoke about these two signs and what do they represent. And I want to bring up a question that it could be some of you wondered, and this is something that happens from time to time. We want to understand why do we eat meat, and how can we eat meat? What is the whole idea behind eating meat? If anyone's a vegetarian and he does it out of human reasons, so that is something great, that's something good. And but the point is to explain how come even though you're not a vegetarian and you still like eating meat, what is the Torah's approach to that? Why can we eat meat and how can we eat meat? Isn't that cruel? Aren't we killing an animal for no purpose? You can live on vegetables, you can live on cheese, etc., etc. So this is connected to these two signs. Let's talk about, first of all, all the creation of Hashem, because the fact that Hashem is the creator of the world, that's not much of an argument. Most of the people agree that there is a creator to the world. Even the great scientists, they bring up certain proofs and they, in their own, that's logical, that is something that we can understand, we can relate to. The other question, and this is sometimes what scientists find hard to agree and hard to understand, is whether there is a certain way to act in the world. In other words, is there also a guideline to the world? Did Hashem create the world with a, when you buy a new product, so usually you get this, it's a piece of paper, or sometimes it's even a thin booklet where you have all the orders, the way that it's done, how you're supposed to treat it, how you're supposed to work with it, what happens if something goes wrong. So the question is whether Hashem created the world for a purpose and with a guiding book that comes together with it. So some of them say, well, Ram al Kol Goyim Hashem. It's a pasuk that we say every morning in Yehich Void, right after Baruch She'amar, Mizmor HaSoda, Yehich Void. And there, many, the one approach, and that's the way that the Gentiles look at things, is that Hashem is above the world. He's not playing our games. He doesn't really take interest in what we do, how we do. He doesn't really care about that. But we know that although Hashem is great and he is so high that we would seem to, it would seem so silly for him to really think about what we do here in the world, care about what we do here in the world. But nevertheless, we know, and the reason is that everything is done with a purpose. Someone doesn't just create something out of the blue and leave it to go. Whenever something is done, and this is a concept that the Rebbe talks about in a few of his letters to people that want to understand, why should we keep Torah and mitzvahs? Why should we observe mitzvot? Why does Hashem care? And what the Rebbe says, the Rebbe teaches us, is that when someone makes something, he makes it for a purpose. It's not just randomly done. Then you have a question, why did he make it? That's another question we've got to deal with, and we've got to try and understand what is the point. But the fact that Hashem created it, it's not just out of the blue. Everything is in with a special kavanah, and that's why we do have a book that guides us through the world. And this book is the Torah, starting from the Tanakh, going on to the Mishnah, to the Gemara, until the Halacha, where there is a pattern and there is an idea behind everything in the world. And then the question is why? Question is why, and this is something that we can touch shortly at the end of the shir. But before we talk about the why, let's try and understand what basically he created. So we know that there are all kinds of creatures. Let's divide them into four creatures. There is the doimim. The doimim means everything that doesn't move, such as stones, as rocks, as sand, mountains, valleys. All of those things are considered to be doimim. They are still, they don't move. There's not much life and energy inside them. There's a higher level called tzomeach, things that grow, trees, plants, vegetables, anything that grows. So it's already a bit higher than the doimim that stands still. It grows. It's not like a mountain that's there forever. But still, it cannot move from one place to another. You're not going to see a tree suddenly moving unless there's a miracle. It's not going to suddenly move to another place. That's the second level. So we have the doimim that stands still. We have that tzomeach that grows, anything that grows. Then we have the chai, the living. The chai relates to all the creatures that move, such as animals, such as fish, such as birds that fly. Anything that moves from one place to another, that already has more life, more energy. That's a higher level. That's a higher level. And then we have the fourth level is a medaber, someone that can also talk. The concept of talking teaches us that there is more life to this individual, to this creature. And the idea is that it has more life and more energy. And who is this relating to? Of course, to a human being who is the highest, and he is number 4. So what is the purpose of this, let's call it a ladder, the ladder of creatures in the world? So each ladder has a purpose, to elevate itself and to bring out its potential in the world. For example, there's the ladder of Maslow. He came up with the idea that there are certain values, certain reasons, and certain accomplishments and safety, or what would be the word, values that a person wants in his life. So first of all, he starts off with the basic needs such as food, safety, health, and then he goes on, and the highest level is, in Hebrew, the word is sipuk atzmi, where you are self-satisfied and you bring out your entire potential. You express yourself in the world. That's why we can find people that, for example, the Olympics are right now. That is more than the fame, more than the money that you get, more than that actual medal. A lot of it has to do, the highest level is self-satisfaction, where a person actually presents himself, and he actually expresses himself in the world in that way. And it's actually a good example because it's going to help us to understand a bit more about this concept of eating meat. So we'll come to the Olympics in a moment once again. But let's start with the diamond. So what is the purpose of the rock that stands still, or the piece of land that doesn't grow, it doesn't doesn't bear fruit, it doesn't add much? What is that, the purpose of the land? The purpose is to elevate itself, to express itself in a higher way through connecting to the level above it, connecting to the level of the tzomeach, anything that grows. Every part of the world wants to connect to a higher level, to a level where it could express itself, achieve a higher goal. And that's why the doimim, its purpose is to help the trees grow. All the minerals that are there, even the fact that it's just there, the purpose of it is for the tree to grow, because then the ground also is included in the tree, and it brings a purpose to the world. That is the idea behind the doimim. Anything that stands still wants to go to a higher level. Then there is the tzomeach, the plants that grow. The plants that grow also want to achieve a certain achievement, and they also want to upgrade themselves to a higher level when they can actually move, and they can't really move, they can just grow up. They help the animals. The animals eat the grass, eat fruit, whatever it is, and through that, the tzomeach is elevated to the higher level of the chai, which means all the plants that grow, anything that grows is elevated to a higher level where it can actually start moving around, connected more to energy, to get more life. And that is the purpose of the anything, all the things that grow. Then we have the chai. The chai are the animals that, for example, the birds, right? Cows, etc., all the fish, all kinds of animals. They also want to express themselves. They also want to be elevated to a higher level. And that is why we eat them. We eat them not as an act of cruelty, but to elevate them and to bring them to a higher level, to a level where they can, first of all, become a medaber. They can start talking. They don't actually talk, but they help a human being that talks. And that's how they bring their purpose. They express their purpose and express themselves in the world. Now, if you would think that we're just doing it to other species, to other animals, and we are saying, you know, that an animal can eat grass and that's okay. But it's not only about them, it's also about the medaber, right? It also applies to us. And this is the book, the guideline to our life, the Torah, that tells us how a medaber should behave. What is a human being? What is the word a human being in Lashon HaKodesh? Adam. What is the word Adam? What does that present? Adam comes from the word Adame lo Elyon, similar to the one above. Adam, Adame. I'm like the one above. And that is our mission in the world. Our mission in the world is to become more and more like the Elyon, like the one above, like Hashem, to elevate ourselves and to make ourselves better people. And there's a lot of things that we aren't allowed to do, that we have to sacrifice for that. Some of them may be even a bit cruel. It's definitely not comfortable not to eat whatever you want. It's not so comfortable to follow all the rules of the Torah in the exact way that the Torah wants. It's not comfortable. The easiest thing is to do whatever we want. But still, we do it because we want to be Adame. Adam is Milashon Adame. It comes from the word Adame. We want to relate and we want to be similar to the one above. We want to become purer. We want to become a better people and more refined people in order to be connected more to Hashem. Even though that comes with a cost. And the cost is that there are a lot of things that we're not allowed to do, and life isn't that comfortable. This is connected to the Olympics, because if you take one of those people that are in the competitions, and these people in the competitions, they have to have a very, very strict way of living. If they want to achieve the highest level and be able to, whatever it is, to swim or to dive in the best way, the fastest way, so they have to give up on some personal wishes or personal way of living. They can't. They have to keep to a strict diet. They have to keep to a certain amount of hours of sleep. They have to practice every single day. That is quite a mission. but still they want to achieve the highest levels. They want to be able to become better people. So it's not compared to us because we are doing it in a spiritual way, in a true way where we bring our neshama into it, where our soul is expressed and also we elevate the things around us. But it's just to compare and to show how sometimes in order to get to the highest part of the ladder and to want to be the best and to want to express yourself in the best way, sometimes you've got to give up on certain things. So this idea is basically to explain that everything in the world has a purpose. Everything in the world has a purpose, which means that we do it for Hashem's sake. Everything has a purpose. The diamond, the lowest level, its purpose is, by the way, the purpose could be also directly jumping to the medaber, which means, for example, if we use a table in order to study on the table, or if we're using here these cameras and these smartphones or laptops, whatever it is, so there is the diamond that stands still. The laptop cannot move, it cannot grow, but it serves the medaber, it serves us, the human beings, and that's how it's elevated. But the regular way is that the diamond serves the tzomeach, the thing that grows, and that serves the chai, the living, which is the animals. And the animals serve the human being, and the human being serves Hashem. That's the highest level, and each one has to sacrifice himself in a certain way. He has to show, or he has to act in a way that's not always comfortable, but nevertheless, that is his purpose in the world, and that is the most satisfying for him. Now, let's talk about these signs. Let's talk about the signs that Hashem tells us, you know what? You want to identify something that's kosher, an animal that's kosher? Make sure that at the end of its feet, it splits into two. And make sure that it re-chews its food. After it swallows it, it chews it again. So let's start from the splitting of the foot at the end. The idea is, and there's a very interesting story connected to this, from the times of the Talmud. Once again, the human being has to show that his purpose is serving Hashem, being connected to Hashem, but he has to do it in a way that splits, in a way where he does right and left in the same way. What is right and what is left? Right is chesed, is kindness, and left is gevura, that's harshness, that's being more restricted. Now, what is the idea of right and left? We all know that we are born with a certain nature. We're born with a certain style, with a certain way of behaving and acting. And the idea of actually serving Hashem in the right way is that we serve Hashem without preferring right over left or left over right. Because if we do what's comfortable, we aren't elevating ourselves. We aren't upgrading ourselves to a higher level. We are just continuing with nature. We are continuing with the way that we grew up, the way that we were raised, the way that our DNA, the way that we were born. Hashem tells us if you want to define something kosher, that you are going in the right direction, connecting to me, do not prefer right over left or left over right. Preferring right over left would be someone that loves to give charity to everyone. He loves to be kind. That's great that you are kind, but it doesn't prove that you are upgrading yourself. Maybe you were born a kind person. Preferring left over right may be a certain person that's he's very harsh, not in a way that he's bad, but just everything is gevura. Everything that he does is just the whole concept of gevura, restrictness, and not spreading things out, doing what's right, but in a way that that's contained, basically. So there's a story in the Gemara about one of the big Tanoim, Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion. And Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion was in the times of the Romans where they forbid Jews to study Torah. They didn't allow us to study Torah in that time, but Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion said, you know what? I'm going to be a moiser nefesh. I'm going to give up myself. I'm going to bring students and I'm going to teach them Torah, even though I know that they might kill me.